Okay. Hi, everybody. We'll get started. Hope everyone is having a easy but meaningful fast. And as we begin the 3-week period, thinking about the destruction of Jerusalem, there's certainly a lot to think about. And I'd like to focus our attention on one section of Talmud. It's from Masechet Shabbat on Daf Kof Yod Tet. Actually, we came across this, those studying Daf Yomi, we came across this sometime last week. And as we read it, I said, wow, what an amazing piece of Talmud, and something very appropriate to study today. If I'd ask you, why was the BeTamuz destroyed? I think everybody would be ready with the answer, right? The famous Talmud that says the first BeTamuz was destroyed because of the 3 great sins, because of murder, Ilui Arayot, right, and Avodah Zarah. And the second BeTamuz because of Sinat Chinam, because of baseless hatred. And everybody knows that, and we've discussed that in the stories and the history behind that many times. And although that's probably the most famous one, this Talmud that we're about to learn is a bit longer, and it lists not one, but rather 8 different reasons for why Jerusalem was destroyed. And so I'd like to go through the different 8 reasons and meditate about them, think about how they might apply. And very interesting, since this is sponsored both by SCA and Tanach study, to look at the Pisukim that they quote. I think we'll see a lot of very interesting and relevant things along the way. Okay, so we start here at the bottom with the statement of Abaye. Amar Abaye, lo charba Yerushalayim, ela bishbir shechilelu ba et haShabbat, shene'emar umeshabetotai he'alimu anehem va'ehal betoham. It says Jerusalem was destroyed only because of violation of Shabbat, because the Shabbat was not kept kadosh but profaned, and quotes a pasuk from Yechezkel. So first, just to notice that the context is all about the observance of Masechet Shabbat. This is found in Masechet Shabbat, so it makes sense that this would be first in the list. And I love the formulation that it says Jerusalem was destroyed only because of this. This is the only reason. Yet we're going to have 7 more that also use the same formula. So we'll think about that formula. But in the meantime, let's look at the pasuk that he's quoting. And so I'm going to go back and forth between the Talmud and have like our Tanach opens. Actually, in some ways, not bad to do this over Zoom, because we can go back and forth, and I can show you all the sections of Talmud and Tanach as well. It's like we have a lot of books open, but we can all look at it together. So here in these Pesukim, Hashem says to Yechezkel, says, go and look at the land, because it's an unclean land, and all the prophets in it are like themselves are committing evil. And then it says the Kohanim themselves, who are supposed to be the religious leaders, Chamsu Torati, they profaned, they violated my Torah. One of the main jobs of a Kohen is to separate between Kodesh and Hol. They are in charge in BeTamuz. And then he adds, and they ignore Shabbat and cause my name, Hashem says, to be profaned in their midst. And furthermore, then he goes to the officials. So you see he's going through each of the leadership categories: Nevi'im, Kohanim, Sarim, people who commit murder. And so actually, and then it continues and talks about what will happen to the land. So when you look at this chapter in Yechezkel, you see that there are many different sins that can be cited as being problematic for the time of the nation. And yet this Talmud here focuses on that one, on Shabbat. Okay, so that's number 1. And now we have Amar Rabbi Abu, Lo charba Yerushalayim ela bishbir shebitelu kiryat shema shacharit ve'arvit. Why was Jerusalem destroyed? Because people did not say Kiryat Shema in the morning and the evening. Matter which seems less severe than Shabbat. Yet Rabbi Abu uses the same formulation. It was only destroyed because of this. Let's see, where's he learning it from? Shne'emad hoy mashkimei baboker shechad yirdofu. People, I'll show you the Pesukim inside. In Yeshaya, it's an extended section. So he says, you people who in the morning you wake up and you already are starting to drinking. Until late, they're still intoxicated all day long, they're drunk. And they are at parties with instruments all day long, and they don't care about God's works. In other words, these are people that don't take any responsibility upon themselves. It says, therefore, and therefore the people will be exiled. So you see that these Pesukim in Yeshaya actually do not say anything about saying Kiryat Shema. So where is Rabbi Abahu getting this, getting his derivation from? Well, we could say, why is Shema important? What is it about? It's in a way our pledge of allegiance. Each and every day, we say in the morning, in the evening, we declare God's name is one. We accept upon ourselves the commandments, the fundamental part of the Berit. So although the Pesukim don't say that, they do say the opposite, and that's what's fascinating here. According to the Rabbi, we can understand what is the value of Kiryat Shema from what is its opposite. The opposite is not taking life responsibly. Just looking for parties every morning and every evening, and not thinking about what is our role, what do we need to accomplish as responsible people and as Yehudim, part of the Berit. That's what the opposite of saying Kiryat Shema is, and that's what he learns from Yeshaya. So that's reason number 2. But we're not done. Amar Rabbi Hamnuna, Amar Rav Hamnuna, Lo Hidary Yerushalayim ela bishvil shebitilu ba tinokot shel bet Rabban, shne'emar shefoch al olal bachutz. He says Jerusalem was destroyed only because. And so now that you see this pattern, that only, right? You see that this is a rhetorical statement, focusing our attention only on this. And maybe each of these sages felt that this was the most important reason. Yet the Talmud, by bringing together all of these back to back, is obviously doesn't think that one's right and one's wrong. Usually when the Talmud wants to say there's a machloket, they'll say the rabbi's name first, Rav Hamnuna, Amad, that he disagrees with the sage before. But here it's always Amad and then Rav Hamnuna. And so editor is bringing them all together is to add yet another one. And so we have to think about which one is the main one, and kind of evaluate ourselves in this light. So Rav Hamnuna, the third reason, says it was because of children not studying in school. It says tinokot, but tinokot literally means babies, but babies can't learn. They don't learn in school. It means young children are not learning. And he quotes a pasuk in Yirmiyah, shefoch al olal bachutz, ma'atam shefoch mishum da'olal bachutz. To appreciate how he's studying, how he's learning this, we can look at the pasukim inside. He says that Hashem is so angry with the people here. It says, I am filled with God's anger. The Navi is saying, Shefoch al olal bachutz bal sod bachurim yachtav gam ish gam isha yilachedu zaken im mele yamim. His point is that God's anger is filled to the brim and is going to pour out over everyone. And when we're saying everyone, it's going to include even the children and the young people and the women and the men and the old people. And so it's really just in a list. And in the pasuk in Yirmiyah, it's actually describing the punishment. But so here you see what's brilliant about Rav Hamnuna's derasha is he's taking the punishment and he's reading it as the cause. Why is this going to happen? Because olal is bachus, because the children are outside and they're just playing rather than being inside, being in school and studying. And so from the punishment itself, he's deriving what the cause was. Okay, so children's education, you could certainly understand if children are not educated into Torah, then what future could there be? Certainly then the city would be destroyed. And so then we come to the fourth answer. Amar Ola, lo haraba Yerushalayim ela mipnei shelo haya lahem boshet panim ze mizeh. Shamar hobishu ki to'ava asu gam bosh lo yeboshu. Ula, it says, continue reading in that same chapter in Yirmiyah, and they'll see that it says that people were doing all kinds of terrible things. They were stealing from each other. They were greedy. They were taking bribes. And here's the worst part of it. They weren't even embarrassed about it. It's one thing to do something wrong. No one's perfect. People do things that are wrong. But at least if someone's embarrassed about it, then, okay, they have a possibility of not doing it again. But when people are just brazen-faced about doing evil and not embarrassed, that's when you know that the end is near and there's no possibility of saving the city. And then we come to the fifth. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, lo haraba Yerushalayim ela b'shvil shehuvshu katan v'gadol, shene'emar vaya ka'am ka'kohen uchtiba tereh tibok ha'aretz. That Jerusalem was destroyed because young people are treated the same as old people. In other words, the elders, the wise people are not given respect. They're treated the same as young people. There's no hierarchy. There's no leadership. There's no respect. And so if there's no leadership, then you can see that there's no one to lead the young and the rest of the nation. And so surely that will be a reason for destruction of Jerusalem to come. Okay, so that's Rabbi Yitzchak, and he learned it from Pasuk in Yeshaya 24, which we also see inside. And again here, actually, if you look at the Pasukim, it's describing not the cause of it's describing the punishment, not the sin. But the Rasha is turning it around. It says, behold, Hashem will come and God's going to scatter the inhabitants. And when Jerusalem, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are scattered, then, this is the pshat of the pasuk, the regular person will be like the priest, the slave, the master. In other words, everyone will be treated the same. There'll be no hierarchy. I remember once we had a speaker, a Holocaust survivor from Sephardic lands from Greece. Her name was Stella Levy. We brought her to the center some years ago. And she was describing her experience in the Holocaust, and she remembers getting packed onto the train, and outside people were being shot. And she says she remembers regular people being shot, and even one of the elders, one of her was like her great uncle, and it was an elder, respected person, just being shot. And so for her, of course, the murder of anyone, such a terrible tragedy, but even more that when such a thing happens, and everyone suffers, and the impact that the suffering of even the great people, even the leaders alike, they all suffer, as becomes even more impactful in our minds and more reason to mourn. So that was the opinion of Rabbi Yitzchak, and now we get to I think we're up to the fifth one. Sixth one. I think it's the sixth one. Amar Rav Amram bered Rabbi Shimon bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Shimon bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Chanina. Lo charba Yerushalayim ela b'shvil shelo hochichu ze et ze. He says, no. You know why Jerusalem was destroyed? Only because people did not rebuke each other. Shene'emar hayu sareha ka'yalim lo maseu mir'aeh. Ma ayal ze rosho shel ze besad zenavo shel ze. Af Yisrael shebeoto dor abshu penehem bakarka. That pasuk in Echa, famous pasuk, it's right at the beginning of Echa, says, "Vayaseh mibat Zion kol hadara hayu sareha ka'ayalim." That the leaders were like stags, were like deer. Lo masu mir'eh, they had no pasture. So the rabbi here is saying, in what way were the leaders like deer? What does that mean? What's the comparison? It says, well, deer, when they're going out to pasture, each one follows the one behind, and they're not looking at where the animal ahead of it is going. They have their faces, they follow the tail of the one just in front of it. And if the one in front is going to a place of desolation, then they all follow, and none of them will have pasture. And so too, the leaders in the generation of Jerusalem, each one had their head stuck in the ground, and they weren't looking around. They weren't checking to see where are the other leaders taking us, what are the people doing. In other words, no leadership, nobody in charge, no one looking out to make sure. And that's, I think, they did not find anyone to shepherd them to a good place. Okay, so that's Rav Amram. And then we get to the seventh reason. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, בשביל שביזו בה תלמידי חכמים, שנאמר והיו מעליבים במלאכי אלוהים ובוזים דבריו ומטאטאים בדבריו עד עלות חמת השם ועד עמו לאין מרפא. This is the reason Jerusalem was destroyed only because the mocking of, the disparaging of Torah scholars. And so this is in a way related to one right before, that there's no leadership, the leaders are not telling the people what to do, and the people are not in turn respecting the leaders, the Torah scholars. And this is quoted from Pasuk from Divrei Yamim. This is all the way at the very end of Divrei Yamim, which gives powerful kind of summary, closure of the whole period of the monarchy and all the evils that happened during that time. And says Hashem sent to your forefathers, Hashem sent messenger after messenger, prophet after prophet, and didn't just destroy the people at once, but because he had pity, he wanted to keep sending them warnings. But what did the people do? Every time a Navi came, the people would mock him and taunt the prophet, and they did not listen until they grew, God's anger grew beyond remedy. So what's so interesting about this Rasha is that the original pasuk is talking about Nevi'im, and yet when the Talmud quotes it seamlessly to be talking about Talmidei Chachamim, right? Even though that's actually a different group of people. And I think this is very important. We can understand why, and this is part of the essence of what Midrash is all about. When Rabbi Yehuda is saying the statement, there are no Nevi'im around anymore. There hadn't been Nevi'im since the beginning of the second Bet HaMikdash. And so who takes the place of the Nevi'im? Who are the religious leaders who express, translate, apply God's word? Well, obviously it's the sages. If there are no prophets anymore that can speak directly to God, we do have the rabbis who can read the words of the Nevi'im, can read the prophetic word and interpret it and apply it and tell the people. So on the one hand, they were not, the rabbis, the sages were not rebuking each other and the people were not respecting them. And so again, a breakdown of leadership, and relating also to one before, that the elders and young people, everyone treated the same. And so he continues and says, what does it mean la'en marpeh, that there's no, cannot be healed? That this is a sin that has no healing. Now we're going to go into a little bit of a tangent before we get to the last phrase, the last reason. And because we just mentioned Marav Yehuda Marav, we quote something else in his name. Pasuk from Divrei Yamim in the beginning. It's from a poetic section, and Hashem says, "Do not touch my anointed one, do not harm my prophets." And again here, the original pasuk is talking about Nevi'im. Anointed one. Who gets anointed? A king, right? So in other words, have respect for the king and for the Nevi'im. Those were the political and religious leaders in the time of the first Bet HaMikdash. And so here, the Rav is quoting it and saying, what does this refer to? Who are the anointed ones? These are children studying in school. And again, the Nevi'im are translated as understood as the Torah sages. And so now we're going to concentrate on this, the idea of education of young children, which we already saw was one of the reasons for the destruction of Jerusalem. Rabbi Siyah doubles down and says even more so, the entire world only exists, only remains because of the breadth of children studying in school. They are the future. So this is a semi-humorous statement, right? A papa says, well, what about me and you? I mean, these were the greatest sages of the time. There was the Rashi Yeshiva, and they're sitting and discussing Torah. They said, how come only the kids who are studying that they fulfill, they hold up the entire world? What about our Torah when we learn? And the answer is, Amar leh, enodo mehebel sheyesh bochet, mehebel she'en bochet. You can't compare the breadth of those studying who sinned with those who are innocent. And so even though these sages are the greatest sages, still there's no one in the world who is free absolutely from sin. But the children, they are innocent. And that innocent study of Torah, that's what keeps the world going. Okay. All right, Lauren's pointing out that this was used to justify keeping open the schools. Okay, right. Of course, not when it comes comparing that to pikuach nefesh, then pikuach nefesh trumps everything. And so you want to keep the schools going as much as possible in the long term, but sometimes that means in the short term we have to close them to keep the children and their parents and grandparents safe. So yeah, but otherwise, you're right. I mean, it's we read this and we think about how painful, in fact, was to have to close the schools. Okay, thanks for that point. So he says, okay, Meharsha Lakish, he adds, Lakish also says in the name of Rabbi Nesiyah, the same sage, and this is a fantastic line, especially placed within this sugya, that we do not stop children from school even to rebuild the Bet HaMikdash. Right, so if you could imagine, right, all of a sudden, Bet HaMikdash is being rebuilt, a big announcement, Mashiach comes, and so do we let the kids out of school to come and help? No, they continue and remain right there, which makes sense because if they're stopping the study was the reason it was destroyed, Jerusalem was destroyed, they're not going to want to stop them, right, just when it's being rebuilt. I think there's something else that's even deeper here, which is that although we mourn for not having Bet HaMikdash and not having full redemption, in a way we have actually now something that's even more important than that. As long as we have the freedom and ability and the motivation to study and to raise our children within the walls of Torah, that is a greater value than the rebuilding of the Bet HaMikdash itself. And so, while we mourn, we also have to think about the positive actions that we are able to take and that we do have around us with so many wonderful yeshivot and a vast majority of our children studying Torah. Okay, so Resh Lakish, in the name of Rabbi Nasiyah, says one more statement. כך מקובלני מאבותיי ואמרי לה מאבותיך כל עיר שאין בה תינוקות של בית רבן מחריבין אותה. רבינה אמר מחרימין אותה. He says in the name of, he says also that he has a tradition in his name of his forefathers. Any city that does not have a school where the children are not studying, that has to be destroyed. And Ravina says not only is it destroyed, but it has to be left desolate. It has to be left as a memory of this is what happens. And so again, the importance of us, right? You don't blame the children for not going to school, but rather the leaders, the parents, the sages, teachers, to make sure that our heritage, our learning, our values are passed on to the next generation. Okay, and finally, we have the eighth and last reason, cause for the destruction. לא חרבה ירושלים אלא בשביל שפסקו ממנה אנשי אמנה. Jerusalem was destroyed because there were no more people of integrity, no more trustworthy people. שנאמר, שוטטו בכלושות ירושלים, וראו נא ודעו בקשו ברחובותיהם, תמצאו איש, אם יש איש עושה משפט בקש אמונה ואסלח לה. A pasuk from Yirmiyah, right, that says, go out and see in the streets of Jerusalem, see if you can find anyone who acts justly, who acts with integrity, and then I'll pardon the city. Right? What does this remind you of?
Abraham.
Very good, excellent, thank you. Abraham with Sodom, right? And Sodom, the most evil city, and Abraham comes and says, right? Maybe there are some good people, righteous people in it, and so Hashem says, okay, go look for them, go see how many there are. And so Yirmiyah obviously is working with that same imagery of Sodom, and that's a very powerful comparison. Sodom, the most evil city in world history, and Yirmiyah is picking up on the comparison to Sodom and said, this Jerusalem is like Sodom. Go around, you can't find one person of integrity in the whole city. If you find one, Hashem tells Yirmiyah, I'll spare the city. Okay, so
Rabbi,
is, yeah?
Sorry, I also heard something from, I read something from Rabbi Soloveitchik that would connect that one with the previous one with learning, because they were saying that why would 10 be sufficient? Because they're able to teach others as well. So then, like,
right, good. As long as you have a core, then they can influence for good. I know there's a program in Israel where they go to troubled neighborhoods. There's a lot of crime and the schools are bad, and they plant in them. They take a few, solid families, and they plant them inside the community, and they bring up their kids in the community, and they are influence the rest of the community for good, right? So if anybody good, anybody we can work with. Okay, so that's what Avaz says, and you see he has a fantastic proof. I mean, truth is, if you go through all of Nevi'im, you can find many reasons why Jerusalem was destroyed, many sins that were happening. And so when each of these sages says their opinion, it's based on Pesukim, but it's also based on, it must be that they're looking around at their own generation and saying, this is one that resonates, that also applies in our generation, and that's why they're picking that one out from among all the various Pesukim that would be relevant to it. So Rava says there's no man of integrity. But then we question Rava. Ini, is that true? Katina. We're going to go through a slightly extended section showing that there were people who were honest, at least intellectually honest. And so we see it as follows. אפילו בשעת כישלונה של ירושלים לא פסקו ממנה אנשי אמנה, שנאמר כי יתפוס איש באחיו, בית אביו לאמור שמלה לך, כסין תהיה לנו. Says even at the worst, at the end of Jerusalem, when there was about to be destroyed, there were still some people that were people of integrity, because when there was no leaders around, each person would go to his brother or to his family member and says, oh, you have clothing, you have a piece of clothing, you be the leader. In other words, no one had anything to offer, so anyone is even a small thing would be asked to be a leader. So what does that mean? This reminds me of Rav Yehuda Amital, one of my Rashi Yeshiva in Yeshivat Hidary. He was a Holocaust survivor, and he came to Israel in 1947. And just as they were preparing for the War of Independence in 1948, he remembers that he came, he's fresh in the land, and they had to put together an army. And they didn't have the standing army, and they had very few people. So they go to him and they say, you seem to be somewhat educated. You be a general. And he says, I'm going to be a general. I don't know anything about fighting. I don't know anything about about military. He says, well, you know more than everybody else, and people seem to respect you. Right. So when there's a lack of leadership, then you point to anyone. And so here the Talmud says, what is this thing? You have clothing. What is this clothing? The thing, meaning Torah, which other people, they only make believe they know Torah. They cover themselves like you cover yourself with clothing to hide what you don't have. So it says you really have it. And furthermore, the pasuk says, that this stumbling block you have. What does it mean you have the stumbling block? That a very interesting comment on learning Torah. That which most people that stumble over. Because Torah is not ascertained, is not learned straightforward way. A lot of times you have to struggle, you have to go down a wrong path, and then you come to the right path. And sometimes you don't understand it first, second time, but as you discuss it and as you learn, then you know it. and says, you have that. So they go to a person that says, you know the Torah. So be our leader. And that person, this is the person of integrity that we're talking about. He says, he raises his hand. He says, I promise, I will not be a leader for you. Yisa means he's swearing. And he says, I'm not going to heal your wounds. I'm not going to be a leader. It takes it as I am not one who encloses himself in the BeTamuz. In other words, I never studied. I know it looks like I did. I'm sorry if I fooled you, but I never actually studied anything. I have no bread. I have no clothing in my house. That's a metaphorical reference to he doesn't know Tanach, he doesn't know Mishnah, he doesn't know Gemara. Okay, so you see that this person is the person of integrity that Rav Ketina is talking about. Here you have someone who's offered a leadership position, and he says, no, not me, pick someone else. You're mistaken. You think that I'm knowledgeable, but I'm actually not. And that sense of honesty, that at least he can say he's not knowledgeable. There you go. He's a man of integrity. So hey, Rava, how come you said there were no men of integrity? Here's one. And so now we question that. And he says, oh, well, no, maybe there he did not admit his ignorance because he was honest. Maybe it's because he knew he would be tested. If he said, yes, I am a learned person, they would say, okay, now teach us. And then he would say, oh, he doesn't have anything to say. And then he would be embarrassed. So maybe he's not speaking out of honesty. Maybe it's just he doesn't want to embarrass himself. And they will reject that, and we say, he could have always answered, says, oh, I did know everything, but I forgot it. I'm getting old, right? And so he still could have said that he's a great sage, and he could have gone out of it. So in fact, he is an honest person. So that he never learned anything at all. And so now we resolve the question in the last very, very powerful line, and this is the end of the sugya. When we say that there were men of integrity through these Pesukim, that was talking about in words of Torah. There were some people who admitted ignorance, so they admitted their lack of understanding of Torah, and so those people were honest men of integrity. But you know what there was lacking? The Masal Matan in business, there was nobody in the city of Jerusalem that was honest in their business dealings, and that ultimately is why Jerusalem was destroyed. And so what we have here is a very impressive and kind of scary list of these 8 items. I tried looking into the order of them. The order of the sages is not by chronological order. It starts in 4th, 3rd generation, 2nd, and it goes back 3rd. But rather, I think it's in thematic order, starting with Shabbat, because that's the Masechet Shabbat that we're talking about, and Kiryat Shema, emphasizing people's own responsibility to Hashem, recognizing God's creator as commander, and what our personal responsibility through the mitzvot is. And then going on to young and old is the theme that runs throughout the next few of them, that the children were not studying in school, and the people did not have, were not embarrassed from each other. The elders and young alike were treated as one, no hierarchy, no one to rebuke the people, and the people not giving respect to the sages. And then finally, I think it's purposeful that it's ending on this last one, kind of the climax is that it's false business dealings. That is what brought Jerusalem down. So I'd like to end with one commentary. This is the Meharsha, Rabbi Shlomo Edel's. He was one of the greatest Talmud commentaries that many continue to study. He writes on Agadah, he writes on Halacha, and he also writes significantly on Agadah. It's a whole commentary on all Agadah throughout Shas. He was rabbi in Poland in the 1600s. His name Edel is actually interesting. It was his mother-in-law's name was Edel, and he took it on because his mother-in-law supported his school, his yeshiva, where he taught for 20 years and went on to be the rabbi of many different cities. And so, you think he, in all his time, he came across many learned people and wonderful students and devoted communities. And yet he, when he comes to this section of Talmud, he says, "Rov avonot kimat kulam hem bedor hazeh ba'avonotenu harabim." He's reading these 8 reasons why Jerusalem was destroyed, and he's using this as a kind of progress report. How are we doing now, 1,600 years later? Have we made any progress? And he reports that we still have these sins among us. And many people that are still that are not keeping Shabbat properly. And if you go everywhere, you see people that are stay up late on Motzei Shabbat and they party all night, and then they miss Kiddush Shema in the morning. And then he talks about the children and that are in schools, yet between Ben Azmanim in the summertime, during vacation time, and they're not learning at all, and they're just wasting their time when they could be studying more. And then you see that people, the young and old, are all striving for positions of authority, to be a Rav, to be a head of Betin. Even those who are not worthy, who are not learned, they go and they apply for those jobs. And then people who everyone wants to be rich and be the same, and they end up stealing from each other. Sages are not respected, and people are scared or don't rebuke each other. They're more interested in honoring each other, even when they don't deserve it. And then finally, masal matan and no be'emunah. The business dealings are not done with trust. People are lending with interest, and people don't pay back until they think that it's allowed. They don't even think you have to pay anyone back. And then he ends up in saying, really, I shouldn't say anything at all because people won't listen, right? And so maybe better that they be mistaken and not violate on purpose. So he says what he can, he does what he can, but he recognizes, unfortunately, that those sins are around in his own time. And I thought that was such an inspiring thing to see this great sage looking around his own generation with honesty and assessing where he's at. And I'll end with a message to ourselves. The rabbis say that any generation in which the Bet HaMikdash is not rebuilt, it's as if it was destroyed in that generation. In other words, the rabbis are not simply saying these as historical references to say this is what they did wrong way back 2,000 years ago, but rather rabbis are picking out these particular actions from all the vast Pesukim and Nevi'im to talk to themselves, about their own leadership, about their own communities, about their own schools. And so when we study this also, like the Meharsha studied it, it's also our responsibility to think about how are we doing? How about, we have wonderful schools and most of our kids are studying in the schools, but how could we improve them? We see wrong things happening around in the community. Do we too often ignore them, or do we take leadership and do something about them? When we see most people are keeping Shabbat, but then for some reason, even someone who's perfectly Shomer Shabbat, you see him carrying his umbrella to the beach. And so, where's education in terms of that? And the last one, the most important one, is the business dealings that we have with each other. Which is really the fabric of a community of families, and making sure that we are honest in all of our dealings, and that we make sure and encourage all those around us to be honest in their dealings. So I think this is an insightful list, and one that we should and need to keep in mind. And hopefully over these next days, over these next weeks, if we think about improving ourselves, improving our own families and communities, we can, and rather than mourning at this time, in 3 weeks from now and next year, we can be celebrating together in a fully rebuilt Jerusalem. Thank you very much, everybody.